All right, so you want to jump into this whole Jim Gaffigan thing at the Al Smith dinner?
Yeah, let's do it.
Catholic, Met Gala, who knew,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But seriously, Gaffigan went after both sides, and then there's Kamala Harris skipping the whole thing, and now everybody's talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Help us unpack this a little bit. What are we seeing here?
Well, I think what's so fascinating is how this dinner, which is usually, lighthearted, it's tradition, and all of a sudden it becomes this like weird political litmus test.
Yeah.
You've got Gaffigan's jokes, you've got Harris's absence, and then you've got all the reactions to it. It's like this gold mine of insight as to where this election might be headed.
Yeah, and he went there with both candidates. I mean,
Right.
with Trump, he even brought up some pretty old controversies.
He did.
Like that whole thing about
Yeah.
Trump discriminating against black tenants, and then he used Harris potentially living in the White House as an example.
Right.
Like, come on, that was a little too far.
Right. It's definitely a bold move, and I think by connecting that accusation to Harris specifically, he's reminding the audience, and maybe more specifically, voters who care about social justice,
Oh, interesting.
about these past accusations against Trump. So it might subtly plant these seeds of doubt about his values, even if it gets a laugh.
Even if it gets a laugh.
And he didn't stop there. He went for that 2024 debate moment about Haitian immigrants, too.
Yeah, the one where he implied that they were eating cats and dogs.
Yeah.
Didn't that cause a whole thing back in 2016, too?
Exactly. And that's why I think this is so interesting, is because he's using these very specific examples, and he's doing it in this setting.
Right.
Where it's like, is he just going for the laugh? Or is he trying to, subtly remind people of these controversies around Trump and maybe influence people who are on the fence about him?
It makes you wonder because it's a Catholic charity event. It's not like he's at, the Comedy Cellar.
Exactly.
He's playing to a very specific audience here.
Exactly. And I think that's what adds this layer of complexity. It's not just about the jokes themselves, but it's how they land on this very particular group of voters.
Right. And speaking of which, that makes Harris's absence even more intriguing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because he did not let that go.
He did not.
I mean, he kept bringing up how important the Catholic vote is, especially in those swing states
Right.
that could really make or break the election. He even called it a layup for Democrats.
He did.
So why skip it? I mean, huge strategic blunder, or there's something else going on?
It really is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Like, on the surface, skipping the Al Smith dinner seems like a huge missed opportunity.
Right.
This isn't just some random campaign stop.
Yeah.
It's a tradition that goes back to 1945. It's a chance for these candidates to connect with voters, show a little self-deprecation.
And you can't deny the importance of the Catholic vote.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge voting bloc, especially in those swing states that can really determine an election.
Huge, absolutely. But we also have to consider the behind-the-scenes strategy here. Campaigns have limited resources. They can't be everywhere at once, right?
So maybe a scheduling conflict, or her team just thought, her time was better spent targeting other demographics.
Those are definitely possibilities, and it's also worth considering if they had any concerns about the optics of the event itself.
What do you mean?
Well, some people criticize these dinners as being a little out of touch with everyday voters.
So maybe they decided the whole fancy dinner thing didn't really fit their message?
It's possible, and I think it would be interesting to look back and see if other candidates in similar positions have skipped this event before.
Okay.
And what the impact was. But going back to Gaffigan's jokes for a second.
Yeah.
He didn't just comment on her absence. He really created this whole narrative around it.
Yeah, she did.
He implied that she was off rubbing elbows with celebrities instead of connecting with Catholic voters.
He did. He brought up those appearances on The View, and Howard Stern even called her daddy.
Right.
He went there.
And so I think it all ties back to what we were talking about before with appealing to specific voters.
Okay.
By contrasting Harris's absence with her presence in those other spaces, it's like he's subtly painting this picture. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's suggesting that she's more comfortable schmoozing with celebrities than she is with, average, everyday Americans.
Right.
And that could really influence how those voters view her.
And then he went straight into the whole shy Trump voter bit.
We did.
The whole, you don't see a lot of Biden bumper stickers thing.
Right.
Got a good laugh out of me. But it also got me thinking,
Yeah.
is the shy Trump voter a real thing this time around?
Oh, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's got political scientists and pollsters all scratching their heads.
Right.
The 2016 election really put this concept on the map.
Yeah, it did.
This theory that there's this whole chunk of voters out there who won't publicly admit to supporting Trump,
Right.
but then when they're alone in that voting booth, bam, they secretly vote for him.
Because they're worried about judgment from their friends, their family, their coworkers.
Exactly. Social desirability bias is a powerful thing.
Totally.
People don't always want to express opinions that might be seen as unpopular.
You're preaching to the choir.
Right. So they might tell a pollster one thing and then turn around and vote a completely different way.
Interesting. So are we actually seeing any evidence of this shy Trump voter effect in the data for 2024?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
Some analysts say yes, they think it was a significant factor in 2016 and it could definitely play a role again.
Okay.
They point to Trump's consistently low approval ratings throughout his presidency, and they say, look, there has to be some hidden support somewhere.
So maybe there are people out there who like his policies, but they're just turned off by everything else and they're keeping quiet about it?
Precisely.
Interesting.
But on the other hand, you've got other analysts who say, no, the shy Trump voter was totally overblown in the first place. Yeah, they say it's not going to be nearly as significant in 2024. They think the polls are accurate and there's not this like secret army of Trump supporters waiting in the wings.
Wow. So we've got Gaffigan cracking jokes about like really sensitive political issues.
Yeah.
We've got a missing candidate and this whole mystery of the shy Trump voter all happening at a Catholic charity dinner.
Right.
This election is already wilder than a rodeo clown on roller skates.
It really is. It just goes to show you how unpredictable things can be, you know?
You think you've seen it all.
Exactly.
And then Gaffigan steps up to the podium and all bets are off.
And suddenly the whole political landscape just feels different, you know?
Yeah.
A little less predictable, a little more open to interpretation.
And you just never know what's going to resonate with voters.
You really don't.
Like you said, sometimes a well-timed joke is just as powerful as a whole stump speech.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe even more so.
Yeah.
You know, you don't see people putting policy speeches on T-shirts, do you?
Mm.
But a good joke, a good zinger that can really stick with you.
It can.
It can make you see things from a new angle.
And speaking of which, what about that joke about the Democrats staging a coup to replace Biden with Harris?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it got a huge laugh.
It did.
But that is like a line straight out of the Magier playbook.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating, is you have all of these layers of political messaging happening at the same time.
Right.
You've got the jokes themselves, you've got the audience reaction, you've got the candidates' choices about whether to even show up.
This is true.
It all feeds into the bigger story of the election.
So we've got Gaffigan landing some pretty pointed jabs. We've got a missing candidate and the return of the shy Trump voter, all wrapped up in this charity dinner.
Right.
Seems like this 2024 election is full of surprises.
It really does. So what do you think it all means?
It really does go to show you can never predict what's going to happen on the campaign trail.
Never.
Like Gaffigan said, sometimes you got to laugh so you don't cry. But what's the takeaway here?
I think the biggest takeaway is just the sheer unpredictability of it all.
Yeah.
Like, we can analyze these moments, these jokes, these strategic decisions.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's the voters who hold all the cards.
It's true.
And I think Gaffigan's performance was a really good reminder that humor has a very unique power in political discourse.
Yeah.
Like, a well-placed joke can sometimes be more memorable, more impactful than like a whole policy speech.
That's true. You don't really see people putting policy speeches on T-shirts, do you?
Exactly. But a good joke, a good zinger that can really stick with you.
It can make you see things from a different angle.
Exactly. And in a close election, those subtle shifts in perspective, those can make all the difference.
Totally. So we may not have a crystal ball,
Right.
but we do have, I think, a pretty fascinating case study here.
We do.
Gaffigan at the Al Smith dinner,
Yeah.
I think gives us a really interesting glimpse into how humor and strategy and voter perception all kind of collide
They do.
in this arena of politics. It really makes you wonder, what does Harris's absence say about the Democrats' strategy this time around?
Right.
Is it overconfidence, a miscalculation, or something else entirely?
Who knows?
Guess we'll have to wait and see.
We will.
Some food for thought as we head into the final stretch of this wild ride.
Absolutely. This is going to be a fun one.
It really is. Thanks for diving into it with me.